to just be you. I know you may be bullied or make fun of if you.
Please go ahead.
It's like I'm also imagining me telling my younger self too. So that's why it's a bit like, oh. But yeah, like I said, I also wish I told my younger self that just be yourself. Don't be ashamed of who you are, where you came from, and there's nothing to be afraid of.
This podcast is proudly supported by the Ōtara Network Action Committee, ONAC, community-owned, community-driven and community-led.
Kia ora, this is our podcast, Me Ōtara, and these are our special guests.
Hi, my name is Zoey Locklear.
Kia ora, I'm Haina.
And they're both going to tell us a little bit about themselves.
U.S. citizen, born and raised in North Carolina, here on a study abroad, and I've really been enjoying my time speaking with people, sightseeing, diving headfirst into the culture.
I'm Haina. I'm from Philippines, but I've been living in Aotearoa for 17 years and in Ōtara since 2020, and I've been loving it. And yeah, I'm just here to help out with the community and do what I can do.
Telling us today about your tribes. Would you like to explain it to the people from Ōtara?
Yeah, so in the U.S., there are, I guess, like anywhere, indigenous peoples of that land, and I am Native American, and I guess the broader term or global term that people understand is American Indian. When I tell people I'm Native American, they think, okay, well, yeah, you were born in the U.S. A ton of people are Native American. I guess reclaiming my identity, I'd rather be called indigenous or Native American, but for this discussion, we'll call it American Indian. Both of my parents are Native. My dad is Lumbee and my mom is Koheri. I am enrolled in the Koheri tribe matrilineally, so following the tribal enrollment of my mother. But I connect and claim both tribes, because I feel in my heart I'm 100% Lumbee and 100% Koheri. But in North Carolina specifically, there are federal and state recognized tribes. Bureaucratics of American Indians in the U.S. is a large issue that is still ongoing. So my, I guess, identity is state affiliated and federally affiliated. There are tribes and people that, are not recognized by different states, United States, or even the federal government, which is a travesty just because it's about greed and about money, that recognition. There are 8 state recognized tribes. I belong to 2 of them, 1 federally recognized tribe in North Carolina. But that is a small representation of the whole of Indian country. There are so many bands, clans, and tribes in the United States, and all of them are beautiful, and all are my people and deserve to be recognized and represented. That I'm from North Carolina, so a southern East Coast state. My people are heavily Eastern Woodland focused. Both of my tribes are, I guess, located on rivers, so using waterways was a large part of my people's, I guess, form of transportation, but very different from canoeing on a river versus taking a waka across the Pacific Ocean. But that's where I think the feeling of comfortability that I have here is because I know that the land I'm from is, the land of my ancestors, and that land is not just land, but it's a part of me. It's a part of my identity and a part of my soul, my being. Mm-hmm. And that's the same for it's a lot of the Māori people that I've spoken to here, where the claim to your land, your water, and your mountains is the same to the claim of my rivers and the land that I'm from. That's a part of me and a part of my family and my being. And I think it's beautiful that there's a thread that connects indigenous peoples across the world, where we know that it's not just ourselves, but the entire earth, wind, sky is a part of us. And, we are not the masters of the land. We just are the caretakers and the people from it. Yeah, I hope that answers a little bit about what you were...
Do you know the reason why, you have to, and you choose one tribe?
Yeah, so talking about tribal enrollment, that all boils down to bureaucratics. So going back to the history of the United States and looking at the relationship between the U.S. government and colonist invaders versus that of American Indians, there has always been a sense of wanting to keep up with data and have an accurate record of these people. And so in the 1970s, with the, large movement, the American Indian movement, that was time in U.S. history where natives, there was a lot of, uprising and protesting that began. And, looking at the 60s and 70s with a lot of anti-war protests that allowed, our people to kind of have our voices heard a little stronger. Whereas before that, going back to the topic of tribal enrollment, a lot of those numbers were maintained and kept by the federal government for peoples that they were keeping tabs on for purposes of relocation and also containment. And the kind of idea that is hurting the thought of choosing one tribe for enrollment is the, idea of blood quantum. So how much percentage of your blood is American Indian? For survival, there are so many people worldwide, but in Indian country alone, in the U.S., that for sheer survival, they had to marry who they could. And those interracial marriages, while the children from them are still valid and still 100% Native and 100%, whatever other culture or race one of their parents was, they're seen as a disillusion or kind of murkiness of that 100% Native blood. And that has played a part in why tribal enrollment is for one tribe only, because there's a certain percentage of ancestry that you have to claim a tribe to be able to even enroll in that tribe. And it's much harder if neither of your parents, whether they are 100% whatever tribe they are, if they were not enrolled in that, it's on you to kind of prove that genealogy and prove your identity when that's an innate part of you. And I think just for the sake of keeping numbers, you're only allowed to, well, it depends on tribe by tribe, but both of my parents' tribes, we have to basically choose. Sometimes it's not a choice. Sometimes, one tribe's rules and legislations around their enrollment differ from another. And that all goes back to bureaucratics and government, and the whole idea of state and federal recognition plays a part into that, because the federal government can say, well, your jurisdiction is too high, this regulation for how much percentage of a person should have native blood is, too high, it needs to be lowered, or vice versa, it's too low, it needs to be heightened for you to be considered for federal recognition or for your enrollment numbers. So just myself identifying and, knowing that I am Lumbee just as much as I am Koheri is not enough for the government, unfortunately. And that's a large issue about, when it comes to federal recognition, there are benefits that the federal government gives to federally recognized tribes that can really help a lot of communities and hurt. So I am an enrolled member in the Koheri tribe, but I am also Lumbee. Since 1950s, the Lumbee tribe has been federally recognized, but it was without benefits. And so the last 10 years, really the last 5 years, heavily, we've been, trying to fight for full federal recognition again. And that's been shot down in the House and the Senate a few times because of American politics and red versus blue dynamics. But if the Lumbee tribe were to ever get federal recognition, and I pray they do, that would open the door for so many different initiatives and opportunities economically for so many people in the tribe. But because of blood quantum and, I guess, politics that us as Native people were tired of dealing with, a lot of that backlash has, I guess, come to play in terms of our federal recognition. And it's a really, really intricate issue, which is there's so many different pieces to play. There's so much more that goes into, why I can't enroll in the Lumbee tribe as well as, the Koheri tribe. When we were talking earlier, you're able to claim both your mother and your father's tribal affiliation and, be seen as a member of both of those. And it's a thing where I have a lot of Lumbee friends and people on my dad's side of the family that, consider me just as much Lumbee as, my Koheri friends and aunties and people on my mom's side of the family, where, I'm just seen as Native, I'm seen as Koheri, I'm seen as Lumbee, and there's not there's no ostracizing of someone for being, one tribe when they're part of another, but they're not enrolled in that tribe.
Not just one identity.
Right. Yeah. Because everything is multifaceted. There's there is so much crossing of different identities in Indian country. When looking at tribal affiliation alone, that's the least of our problems. There are so many
It's plenty more.
Yeah, and there are larger issues, more prevalent issues that we need to be addressing rather than, what percentage are you? Are you valid in your identity?
Care about the numbers.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, there's a saying that one of my professors told me that, has been really, I guess, has really stuck with me. identity and DEI is not, black, white, brown. It's green. Green for money. A large part of, I guess, identity and, I guess, initiatives for people that need that representation, need that support, need that community, need their tribal community, need those resources, because of things that have happened to their ancestors, because of their sheer identity, are happening or are not happening on the counterpart because of greed and money at the end of the day, which is a sad reality, but
it is.
It's, one we've got to work to, I guess, fight and shift in our lifetime, hopefully, if not the ones of the generations behind us.
Yeah.
I got a question for you, actually.
Oh, all right.
So, being a Filipino born, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So, being Filipino born and coming into New Zealand, how much of a difference for you from were you born in?
Yeah, I was born in the Philippines, yeah.
Okay, I just want to get that right.
No, you're good.
So how much of a difference in terms of your environment and your culture being transferred into a different country? And know that our indigenous people, we travel the seas as mentioned before.
Yeah.
But no matter how big the sea or how small the sea, a travel is a travel because it comes with a story. For you, you have a unique story. What is that story for you in terms of growing up from here to here you are now?
Well, like I said, I was born in the Philippines, so I came into Aotearoa really young. Like I was 5 years old, I knew nothing, language, nothing, I only knew my language. And I remember my mom told me that my teacher told my mom that I was talking to her in our language. So I didn't know that, so that's when I was like, damn, I thought I lost it the moment we arrived in Aotearoa. But after hearing that, I was like, oh, I'm glad I can still speak my language. I can, interact, properly. But it was a struggle, but at the same time, I saw other brown-skinned people. So I was like, all right, it's okay, but I was still classified as Asian. So that still kind of stopped me from, I don't know, just putting myself out there. And I also didn't like, just being in a new environment was just it was scary. Yeah, really scary. And during that time, sorry.
Yeah.
Keep going, man.
Yeah, during, there is still racism within the minorities. And obviously for years I held a grudge against other brown people just because of my bad experience. Because, I'm Asian, but I'm brown, but I still wasn't accepted. So it was a struggle, but eventually I went back and sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Yeah.
That's a perfect answer.
Please don't.
Like you said earlier, everyone has that unique story.
Yeah.
I have a Filipino brother. He had the same story where he was 4 years old. So he came. His family owns a bakery in Ōtara.
Yeah.
And in New Zealand, and with your experience being here in New Zealand, what sort of comparisons can you make that you've seen so far with the Māori culture and New Zealand culture? I have a Native American friend by the name of Randy. She lives in South Dakota in the Pine Ridge Reserve. and we talk back and forth together. I'm a proud Samoan, so I live my mother lives in the village of Savai'i, so we talk about our ancestry. So when you came here, I feel like this will be very appropriate. When you came here, what sort of sense did you got when you first arrived here in New Zealand?
Yeah, I've been in New Zealand since May 18th, so about a month and a week or two. And I guess upon first impressions upon arrival, I knew this place was very special. From an American's perspective, looking at New Zealand, I only see like the utmost expression of beautiful culture, and then coming here, that is even more true. Everywhere I look, it is a beautiful expression and, I guess, presentation of so many different cultures, especially Māori and other Pacific cultures here, which is a breath of fresh air compared to back home, where so many people are even surprised that American Indians are still real, are still alive. I tell people that I'm Native, and they're taken aback. They're like, I didn't know that they have them here. What do you mean by that? Would they have them here? So there's an awareness and understanding in global context of Indigenous peoples here in New Zealand that is refreshing, but also motivating to know that that's possible. And in terms of, I guess, how I have related or the connections I can make to my home, to New Zealand, the sense of community and friendliness that exists here is, I guess, similar to that which you can think of the, I just guess, Southern charm, just kind of a friendly, nice presence that, you know, is a little bit slower pace of life, focused on just enjoyment. That is something I've found a lot of people in New Zealand, they focus on life outside of work rather than work than life. Yeah, there's there's a sense of just enjoyment here. The kind of like seize the day energy that I find, you know, is similar to my community back home, but not the United States.
I'm glad.
And I think that's important to make that distinction that, you know, my home community is different than that from the next town beside me, different from the state across the country back home in the U.S. And I think when it comes to my identity as Indigenous person in the United States, I feel very much safe and seen here, but also celebrated. I guess because there's not a lot of Native Americans that, you know, are in New Zealand, let alone come to New Zealand. It would be the same as, you know, someone that is Samoan coming to, you know, my tribal center and me wanting to know all about their culture and vice versa. There's a appreciation and love for other Indigenous peoples here in New Zealand that I think is the same, you know, back in the U.S. or specifically back home, that the, I guess, desire to learn, but also to appreciate and respect, you know, your culture and your traditions and your ways of life. That's very similar. Kind of on a more negative note, a lot of the same issues that are systemic that my people are facing are the same here. And some of the conversations I've had just talking about, you know, what was your, perspective growing up, or how was your home like, or, what is, I guess, your experiences with school or in the community. There are a lot of issues with drug and alcohol abuse, systemic poverty, dropout rates in schools, but also the, I guess, disconnect between identity and culture and being able to proudly practice and reclaim that, kind of balancing these two sides of yourself, your identity and your community, but also what you need to do to make money and be successful in the world. Balancing those two sides of yourself, walking in two worlds, yet it's the same path. That's my experience, and I feel like that is very similar to, a lot of the indigenous peoples that I have talked to here. It's, two sides of the same coin, but just opposite, sides of the globe. But with that, as there's a lot of hurt in our communities, there's also a lot of beautiful work that is being done here. The, I guess, community outreach and support and resources that you guys are providing and you're doing the dirty work. You're getting your hands and your elbows dirty, and it's hard because the resources are low, energy is low, but you need to support your community and you need to be there for your people. And that is similar to a lot of the initiatives and outreach and places for support back home. My tribe, we have a lot of, I guess, community outreach initiatives, and it has been hard to get up off the ground because, you can share the word as much as possible, but if the hands aren't there to help pass out the bags, or, the hours are long, or the money's not there to supply it, how is it going to get done? But there's a resilient nature that is in all indigenous peoples, and that is seen in the tenacity of doing the work and putting in the energy regardless of if you have it or not. I was actually speaking with someone before this conversation, and he said that if there's a problem, you need to address the problem first and go where the problem is. Don't worry about the money, don't worry about the resources, don't worry about the time. That will come. If your energy and your generosity is there, then it will be intentional and it will happen. And that's the similar kind of like idea between my people back home and fighting those systemic issues in the community, doing small things rather than trying to go straight to the government and fix it at a large scale. And I find that is similar here. A lot of the healing work is done on a community level, rather than trying to fix it on a wide scale. Obviously, you would want it to be fixed on a wide scale. That's the end goal. But you can't take a jump before you assess the step. And doing a lot of the hard work and being selfless in that, because it's going to be for your community. That's similar to my people back home and that here. And it all ties back to community and who we are as a people and our identity and connection to one another. I
feel that a lot of our communities, especially our local Ōtara communities, trying to reconnect with their own native background. Like most colonialist type of teaching, is that they sort of, in the early 1960s, 1970s, they sort of detached themselves from that sort of teaching. It took such a fight to get something like Te Reo Māori to be a subject in New Zealand.
Yeah.
It took such a fight to get even like cultural studies to be a thing in school. So all I could say from here on your brothers and sisters of the southern seas, keep fighting the good fight, because you're not gonna. Nothing's gonna be done if it's just a standstill.
Right.
We got beautiful young people like yourselves, you know, who are fighting for the good fight, and we're in the background going,
Yeah.
it's good.
And I think a win for one Indigenous community is a win for all of them, because that just sends a message that, yes, it's not happening, but it can happen for you, to keep fighting, keep going, for recognition for your people and your ways of life. At the school I attend back home at UNC Chapel Hill, we are still fighting for a university-wide land acknowledgement. Our university was built on stolen lands by enslaved people, and you know how global history is. We don't like to say reality, we like to sugarcoat things. And in the last, I would argue the last 10, 15 years, there's been a massive Band-Aid that has been ripped off. Even the past 2 years, our American Indian and Indigenous Studies program almost went under and was grouped in with American Studies. We had some really large petitions and a lot of letters and meetings with higher administration about, you know, how dismissive that is to the people whose ancestors' land that you are currently running an institution on. And I think in the fight to, you know, save our program, the AIIS program is still intact, but if we wouldn't have spoken up and fought as hard as we did, it would not be here today. And still continuing to fight for just an acknowledgement of the people whose land the university is on. You know, that has been going on for countless number of years, since before I was even thought of, let alone born. And hopefully it will not continue to take longer, but if it does, that's a fight that, you know, I'm willing to continue as a student in my last year and as an alum of the university. In instances like that, it may seem small to have a statement written or out to be said at every university event or something like that, but it's not just words, because we know words are powerful. Words are representation, and words are acknowledgement, and you know, that's what this one instance is. And so by us fighting for this, hopefully that, you know, is inspiration to other Indigenous peoples at other universities or even across the world to, you know, fight against the injustice that, you know, is upon them. And, you know, I am inspired by those, you know, that came before me for the issues that they were fighting against, because, you know, without them, I would not be here. And it kind of goes in vain if I am not fighting against injustice where I see it, especially when it comes to my people and those that are not my people, but it's still an injustice. There's a saying in Indian country, or for a lot of Native peoples, and it goes around the idea of 7 generations. So 7 generations ago, it was around the time where a lot of people were being still forcibly removed from their land. And the resilience and tenacity that they showed just to survive, those 7 generations past have allowed me to be here. So the work and just struggle and pushing the boundary forward that I do within the short span of my life is for the 7 generations after me. So my children, my grandchildren, and so on. And so that cycle of the idea of reciprocity and pushing and just making those strives for your people is not for you, and it's not because of you. It's because of those 7 generations, and it's for those next 7 generations. And that idea, I think, keeps me motivated, you know, even in the really, really hard times, and, you know, going back and forth with, you know, an organization or a board that wants nothing to do with me, and this is the smallest issue that they're facing on you know, the multitude of things that they need to do in their day. But it doesn't matter how insignificant it is. If it's something that is worth the fight, then it's meaningful in its efforts. And, you know, that motivates me, and that's something that I am motivated by when I see other people, you know, working in that same mindset, in that nature, you know. It's a beautiful struggle. I guess that's the best way to kind of describe it.
It's definitely an image that would leave just mentally for someone who's listening to this, and just sitting here, no joke, it feels like a giant aura when you just enter the room, and you just explained everything beautifully. And from a generation downwards, I hope that the younger could look into this, and they can learn and aspire. You know, we see a lot of events here in New Zealand, the big hikoi, that led the Māoris into a beautiful decade of just strength and activism. You know, they learned how to fight, and with that, change was born. You know.
And your existence is activism and resilience in itself. Like, you are a living testament against oppression, against colonialism, against any efforts of people, whether that's in the past or present, to erase you and erase your identity. And just being alive, just existing, is a fight against that. And that should give you some sense of, you know, power and motivation, and, you know, awareness that, you know, your ability is already at its max, just, you know, existing. But you are so much more capable of things, or you're capable of so much more things than you even can think of, just because of the resiliency that's already in you. And letting go of that fear of, you know, doing something or taking on something because, you know, someone that doesn't look like you or doesn't come from your same background or have your same identity, you know, has never done it before. Well, that just maybe mean that you know, inaugural act is meant for you to do it. You are meant to be the person to be the role model for the younger generation, to see, oh, someone like me is doing this, or they are able to, you know, achieve this, or, you know, I just kind of identify with them, and I see them as a positive figure in my life, and I want to, you know, do better for them and for my community. All of those are valid and 100% capable or for you. And I guess I'm stumbling over my words because I also am full of just a sense of love and understanding here. It's really, I think we're having a conversation that is unsaid as well. Kind of, you know, knowing what I'm saying without me saying it very eloquently. Just knowing that the sky is the limit, because you have not even hit your limit yet.
People think they have.
Yeah, and
that's when they stop.
Right, and the the unique perspective and background that indigenous people have because of our connection to community allows us to have a support system that is so much richer than just networking or people that we know in our same career field, etc. You know, I'm having an issue writing this letter that I need to be sent off to someone, but you know who I'm going to call? I'm not going to call the professor for advice on, you know, how to word this. I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to call my auntie for inspiration just because I need some of that personal motivation. Because I know I can do it because you wouldn't be in the positions you are if you couldn't do it. Or you wouldn't be able to do something if you couldn't do it. It's sometimes you just need that community support. And
a little push.
Yeah, and in your identity, in your interactions with family, in interactions with community members, that is that motivation, that is that networking, that is that support that is unique because it's not necessarily in a Western professional sense. It's in a innate human sense. And it's so much bigger than just, you know, a conversation or a hug. It's like letting you know that, you know, the fight is hard and the work is hard, but you're doing it because you're carrying out your ancestors' wildest dreams just by being here. I think that is something that, you know, keeps me going as well and keeps me grounded at the same time.
I love it. It's great. You've been waiting for the final question. So imagine me, a 4-year-old who doesn't know their identity in terms of culture. Mother and father have been sort of indoctrinated into the English way of learning. And that's not how most things with our parents is. They come to a new country, they indoctrinate the country's culture, way of life. What is the best way to tell little Vincent how can he connect to his own culture? I'll start with you.
Little Vincent. Oh.
Yeah. Hi.
Sorry. I would say to just be you. I know you may be bullied or make fun of if you.
No, you go ahead. Please go ahead.
It's like I'm also imagining me telling my younger self too. So that's why it's a bit like, oh. But yeah, like I said, I also wish I told my younger self that just be yourself. Don't be ashamed of who you are, where you came from, and there's nothing to be afraid of. That's one thing. It's nothing to be afraid of. That's it.
I love it.
Yeah, I was always involved. So in the school system I went to, in the county and the city school system, there was an Indian education program, and there were a lot of other programs and clubs that were culturally based, and they wouldn't get the official role or roster of all of the Native kids or all of the Hispanic kids or etc. For I guess the different cultural identities, but you know they would have an announcement the teacher would say in the classroom. The NASA club is meeting, you know, this Thursday. They would send a little letter home to the parents and ask permission if the kid could stay after, and that would build that early awareness for identity and culture of those kids who, you know, were from that culture, whether they were involved and connected or not. Luckily, I'm so blessed that I grew up in the same county, same area, right down the road from my tribal center, so I was always connected with culture, but there were still some kids that lived down the road from me that were Koheri that were not connected. And the Indian education program at my schools allowed both connected and non-connected, Native kids to have that sense of community in our culture in school. And I think that was just a blessing that a lot of Native kids in schools that are in heavily populated areas have programs like that. But there are also, kids in urban areas, say, for instance, Raleigh or Charlotte in North Carolina, that are not near tribal territory that don't have those programs. I guess it's hard for, a 4-year-old kid to get on social media or get out in the community and learn those things. But echoing what you said, be yourself and never give up your passion for the world, and always be inquisitive. That sense of wonder and curiosity, never lose that. I always like to think I'm a kid at heart. I love to play and I love to learn. And I think it's good to have that childlike wonder and mindset sometimes about things. There is always something else to learn and something to find out about myself. And starting when you're a little 4-year-old kid, I think, figuring out yourself and the rest will come. That ability to connect with your culture is always going to be there. And I think the process of reconnecting, when you have, enjoyed your time as a youth, it will come. But, just have fun and keep fighting. It's a good fight, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those sounds. Yeah. Shall we?
Okay, I just want to thank my 2 guests for today. And the back man, cameraman, for some of your questions. And on behalf of the whole Ōtara, we'd love to thank you for coming around with us, taking you on a tour. Probably